Should UGA football be more worried about the Alabama Crimson Tide? And by UGA football, I really am talking more about the fan base than the actual program because I think it'd be silly of us to assume that they're not worried about any of these games. And obviously, the only game I think that they're focused on is, well, probably none because they're getting ready for this offseason workouts and just improving themselves. But when the season does roll around, that Alabama game is going to be early on in it. It's going to be in that first month. It's going to be in September, and it's going to be on the road in Tuscaloosa. With Nick Saban retiring, the narrative around Alabama changed. It is that, man, that the GOAT is gone, and that's true. And I do think that Kalen DeBoer is a downgrade. I'm not saying that Alabama's going to be better or anything. I've just, as time has gone on, feel like the step back that they're going to take is not going to be as far as I thought. This is still a really good roster. Kalen DeBoer is still a really good coach. I do think that things change. I do think that transition periods and first-year head coaches don't usually perform really highly, although he's in a situation where he has a good chance to do it. I don't think that Alabama's schedule is insane when you look at it compared to the rest of the SEC. Like the teams that got it the worst were, Georgia and Florida. I think probably have the two toughest schedules in the conference, but Alabama didn't get one of the worst ones. This is something that they can come out of 11-1. I don't think 12-0, 11-1, 10-2, just because ultimately I do think that Georgia is going to win that game. But we are talking about a Week 4, 7:30 home kickoff for Alabama. Jalen Milroe, it's an if. It is an if. It could be a big if, but if Jalen Milroe improves just kind of overall, but more specifically as a passer and a decision maker, which I think that Kalen DeBoer has the opportunity to help do. I think that he's, the last 2 years at Washington, I do think fall a lot on Michael Penix and Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk's and Jalen McMillan's shoulders and how good that those guys were as a group. But Jalen Milroe is one of the most dynamic football players in the country. This is a guy that can run like a deer. He runs like a running back and can just launch the football over the top and is not afraid of big moments, right? You think about the 4th and 31 play. You think about just a handful of really big-time plays against Georgia in the SEC Championship. This is a football player that's not afraid and is extremely dynamic. He should strike fear in defenses, even if he is not the elite quarterback or the elite passer that Carson Beck or Quinn Ewers or even, I'm not calling Jackson Dart elite, but he's a very good passer, right, that Georgia's going to have to play this year. Jalen Milroe still might be the scariest one out of all of them because they already know and already have seen how he can affect the game by extending the play, being patient, waiting for that last moment, or taking off for 30, 40 yards, which he did against Georgia. Those are things that Jalen Milroe can do. Will this marriage between Alabama and Kalen DeBoer work? I don't know. Is he the guy before the next guy? Maybe. All right, that's kind of how I talk about certain coaches. Are you the guy before the guy? Mark Richt ended up being the guy before the guy, even though he was the guy for a long time and really helped Georgia get back to a very good spot. I think that Alabama's being underestimated. I don't really look at Texas and Oregon and Ole Miss, Notre Dame, kind of the tier that they're being clumped into. They're actually being kind of right below that tier of Oregon and Texas. I don't think that it's this drastic step after them because, just starting off with the roster alone and you go down it, Kendrick Law, Jeremy Bernard, Kobe Prentice, that's a pretty solid wide receiver trio. These are players that are really good and I think are going to have pretty solid seasons. You get a Ryan Williams, who is a big-time wide receiver recruit. We know that over the years, Alabama has had freshman wide receivers contribute immediately and contribute in really big ways. Amari Cooper, Devontae Smith, go down the list. Jalen Waddle contributed I think that a lot of their really, really, really good receivers contributed from the jump. And I don't think that necessarily is going to change with Ryan Williams if he's good enough to get out there. This is going to be one of the better offensive lines. They really only have to, you got to replace your center. They thought they were going to have to replace their tackle and Caden Proctor, one of the best tackle prospects in recruiting in the last few years. He returns after a weird recruitment situation with Iowa. This is a running back situation that I look at and say, why is no one talking about Jam Miller and Justice Haynes and Richard Young? The Georgia football community is very familiar with former Buford Wolf Justice Haynes, who kind of spurned Georgia Georgia was obviously up there in his recruitment, but he ends up choosing Alabama over the Dogs and others. That's another year, in the belt. This is a team that can go vertical and can also run the read option. And I think that that's a dangerous offensive football team. On defense, well, a really good cornerback duo leaves in Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold. It's hard to replace that. You get Damani Jackson, a big-time transfer recruit. They supplemented a lot of what they lost. They went and they took a couple players from Washington. Kalen DeBoer brought a few guys over. There's still some really big names on this defense. You think about Malachi Moore, LT Overton, the defensive lineman. Jamarian Latham, I think, is a pretty good player. I've got their roster pulled up, and I'm just kind of naming the guys that I think are solid. I don't think this is a bad football team. And I look at their schedule and I say, well, let's chalk up Georgia to a loss. They started the season with 3 W's: Western Kentucky, South Florida, and Wisconsin, I believe. I believe those are going to be wins. I think they'll beat Vanderbilt. I think they'll beat South Carolina. At Tennessee, I think it's going to be a really, really interesting ball game if Tennessee kind of lives up to the hype that they've gotten in this offseason. But ultimately, I do think that Alabama is a better football team than them. Missouri is interesting, right? If Alabama takes the step back that people expect, then we're talking about 4 really critical games. 4, maybe 5 if you count Oklahoma. But 4 really critical games where this is the make or break. Georgia, September 28th. Tennessee, October 19th. Missouri, October 26th. And LSU, November 9th. Now, 3 of those are in a 4-week span with the Tennessee, Missouri, and the LSU games. At LSU, at Tennessee, does not help. Those are going to be really challenging games for them. But I just think that this idea that they're going to take this huge step back is kind of stupid. You look at their betting odds. The over-under that FanDuel and a lot of other sites have set the line at is 9.5 wins for Alabama. Georgia's set at 10.5 wins. Teams like Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, they're set at 10.5 wins. So Alabama's kind of in the tier with Michigan, Ole Miss, where they're set at 9.5 wins. I'd probably take that. I don't really think that I think this is probably a 10-2 football team with a shot at getting into the college football playoff and competing. Is Kalen DeBoer the long-term answer for Alabama? I don't know. Will he adapt to the way you have to recruit and develop in the SEC? Will he be a transfer portal merchant and that's the way that he builds the roster? It's not the end of the world. I don't think that's the most effective way you can do it. This team is just, it's not as bad as what people say. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post, if you made it this far with me, thank you. And I thank you for signing up for a newsletter. If you've done that, if you haven't done that, I'm providing that link in the description of this video down below. It only takes a few seconds to sign up. We're still trying to push out content to you guys. We're trying to do a good job of doing that every single day. Even though it's the off season, we can still talk about stuff like this. Things will be coming up. We're really not as far from the season as you think, right? Because mid-July, when SEC Media Days rolls around, that's when it starts to get real. And then all of a sudden, fall camp starts in August. And then the season starts in August too. So we're really, we're almost less than 2 months away. We're less than 3 months away from this thing. So take advantage, sign up for our newsletter, and stay in tune with what's going on with the Georgia Bulldogs. And I've been talking a lot about what's going on with the Alabama Crimson Tide. I do think that Georgia matches up really well against them. I just think that this is a better team. But I said that last year. Now they no longer have the GOAT. That is the biggest difference in this, is that he was just the best coach of all time. And he did beat Kirby head-to-head. That he had Kirby's number. And when you look at it in history, like the Dogs only beat them once under Kirby. It was like 1-4 or 1-5, and all of those games being huge. Only one of those being a regular season game. The rest of them had playoff, conference championship, national championship implications, or were literally those games. So it's different. It being at home really helps Alabama, obviously, but this Georgia team is really good. The line set at about 3.5, similar to the line that Georgia had against Alabama in the SEC championship and the national championship in 2021. It was around 3 points. So that's kind of what Georgia's being viewed at as the favorite in Tuscaloosa this fall. I just think that they should take it seriously because we already saw that Jalen Milroe can make those plays, even though he didn't have this insane game against Georgia where he just took over and dominated. No, but he made all the big plays in the big moments, and they will have the crowd backing them this time around. So tough sledding. Georgia's got a tough schedule. This Alabama game, I think, is getting overlooked because of the Texas game and just the combination of it all. But September 28th, I can't wait to go. I can't wait to be there. It's going to be electric. I haven't been to Tuscaloosa. There's a few environments that I'll be in this year that I hadn't been in that I'm really excited to be a part of. So will Georgia win? I think so. Will it be easy? No. And no one was saying it was going to be easy, but it might not be as easy as people think.